I'm speaking on the 3 keys to success. Last May, I had the opportunity to attend AAA's National Convention in Washington, D.C. And the keynote speaker spoke on the life and philosophy of Steve Jobs. And he said that Steve believed in only focusing on 3 keys or principles at a time. Do you know why? He said that's all people can remember. So I'm hoping that tonight you can remember my 3 keys to success, hoping that they will inspire you in your own life and business. But before I tell you what those 3 keys are, I'd like to give you a little summary of my background. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, in a family of 7, but I was an only child. My great uncle is not on that photo, but you see my grandmother and grandfather and my mother and dad and my mother's sister. My parents converted to the Mennonite faith from being fashionable Presbyterians shortly before I was born. So I grew up in a rather somber environment. There were no children's voices but my own. We had no TV. Radio was limited to sermons and to the news. And I learned early on to be submissive and do what I was told. In 1st grade, I went to a 1-room school, very similar to this one. There were 48 children, 8 grades, 1 teacher. She was my mother. 2nd grade, I went to consolidated school, and my mother again taught me, this time in 3rd grade. My father was a painter, carpenter. As I grew older, while I didn't wear the head covering, as the rest of my female relatives did, I still felt alienated from my classmates. For you see, I couldn't attend dances, I couldn't wear slacks, and I couldn't go to sporting events. Football was too violent. Basketball, I was not allowed to look at the guy's legs. So my socialization happened in church, or with a few girlfriends in my neighborhood. When I was a teenager, I desperately wanted to escape my restrictive background. Fortunately, I was allowed to do summer mission work in Brooklyn and Bronx, New York. It was then that I decided to become a social worker. I eventually earned my degree in behavioral science from Messiah College and my master's from Drexel University in Philadelphia. And while I was getting my master's, Messiah College hired me as the food service manager at their satellite campus near Temple University. This gave me my first management experience and helped to build my self-confidence. Upon graduation, Messiah College invited me back to become an instructor in food and nutrition and consumer management. I was 22 years old and teaching some students older than I was. 2 years later, I was married and the mother of a 1-year-old daughter when we moved to Ashland, Ohio. I took a job working for the Bureau of Services for the Blind as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I remember dropping off my daughter Jessica one day at the babysitter's and feeling pretty good that I had found a good sitter. But when I came home, I found her playing out along the street, completely unsupervised, and the babysitter was in the 2nd floor apartment. I felt that there should be some way to give parents peace of mind while they worked, but I sure didn't know where to find it, at least in that community. Shortly thereafter, I had another daughter, and my husband took a job in the Toledo, Ohio area. We attended a Nazarene church, and the pastor asked me to start a child care center as his way of attracting more young families into our growing congregation. I jumped at the chance because this allowed me to be with my daughters at the same time I worked. 2 years later, the center was full, and I took a job selling life insurance. But the parents from that church's child care program contacted me and said, "We don't like what's happened to that program since you left. Why don't you consider starting your own child care center?" As I look back on 1982, I think I must have been a little bit crazy. The country was in a recession. interest rates were hovering around 18 and 21%. Can you imagine? My husband was unemployed, my daughter was receiving free school lunches, my parents were making our house payments, and I was 8 months pregnant with my third daughter. It certainly was not a good time to start a business and expect to succeed. Today, Children's Discovery Center has 7 locations in the greater Toledo area. We did have 8, but I just sold one this summer. And we've just built a brand new state-of-the-art $3 million facility in Charleston, South Carolina. Combined, we serve nearly 1,400 children weekly, and we employ over 200. Griffin House has published our book, Inspiring Spaces for Young Children, which features aesthetic principles that turn child care centers into places of beauty. This has resulted in a very lucrative contract with the U.S. Air Force to help transform their child care centers at their bases in South Korea, Japan, Alaska, and Germany. We've been involved in designing child care centers around the country and have been keynote speakers for national events. We currently rank number 42 among the largest for-profit child care companies in North America. But how did we get from that very humble beginning in 1982 to where we are today? Now, I will share with you the 3 keys to success. Key number 1, excellence is our mantra. Growing up, my mother instilled in me the importance of always doing my best. So our company's slogan is autograph your work with excellence. So from the corporate office to the directors, assistant directors, teachers, assistant teachers, and maintenance people, everyone knows that they are to strive to do their best. Always mindful of this goal, several of us have traveled on 3 different occasions to a place called Reggio Emilia, Italy, that Newsweek magazine dubbed the best child care model in the world. I wanted to be the best. I wanted my centers and my employees to learn how we can be as outstanding as those child care centers in Reggio Emilia, Italy. Along the way, we have taken the best of their ideas and we've integrated them into our own centers. We call our centers the inspired approach to learning. And we believe that maybe someday, just maybe, the Reggio educators will want to come and visit our centers for their own inspiration. A few years ago, with a lawsuit hanging over my head, which was brought by 3 disgruntled employees, I wondered if it was time to sell. I felt pretty discouraged. But as a member of the Governor's Small Business Advisory Council, I learned about a program called Focus 4, in which business owners come together from all over the country, and we meet once a quarter, and we would discuss some of our business and personal challenges, and we would look for ways to overcome those challenges. I learned the importance of 3 concepts. We were talking about one of these at my table this evening. Finish what you start, be on time, and the last one has stuck with me and has served me so well in business. Do what you say you're going to do. And if ever you're not sure how to make a decision, if a problem arises, go back to that slogan. Do what you say you're going to do. I learned that my role as CEO was not to manage the business. Does that surprise you? It's not to manage the business. I'm supposed to have systems in place that whether I am there or not, this business functions at the same level. My role is to not be reactive, but to be proactive in my decision making. And that means taking time away from the business where I can think creatively. And whether you are a nonprofit organization or whether you are a business, you want to make decisions that will always ensure the future viability of the organization or the business. Through these classes, I was able to move forward with renewed vigor to ensure that CDC is a first-class operation. By the way, the lawsuit was eventually dropped, but this experience turned out to be a very important growth step for me. Excellence also means investing in our employees by offering training experiences, competitive benefits and wages, and opportunities for promotion. Excellence is demonstrated in providing value to customers. When I began 32 years ago, or almost 32 years ago, I charged $45 for infants and $40 for preschoolers per week. I was right in the middle of the pack. I thought that was exactly where I was supposed to be as a business owner. I should charge an average rate. But my advisory board said, Lois, you have got to charge more than anyone else offering childcare in your area. Because if you do, you will have the money you need to hire educated employees, to reinvest in your facilities, and to offer a high-quality program. Believe me, that was a tough decision for me to go back to those working parents and begin to raise the rates. But it was the right decision, for today we have set the standard for childcare in our community, in our state, and we are now setting the standard in the Charleston market. And we have won family favorites for the last several years as the best and most favorite child care center in our greater Toledo area. As a young mother, pursuing excellence also meant balancing career and family. I limited my evening activities so that I could attend my daughter's basketball games, cheerleading activities, and other school events. Today, I enjoy a very special relationship with my 3 daughters. My oldest 2 daughters are now part owners of the company, and they're part of our management and design team, and they were both integral in developing the content and the graphics for our book. It has been a joy to watch them grow professionally, as well as to bring their grandchildren to our center. My youngest daughter is a fashion designer with Kohl's in Milwaukee, and I would bet that some of you wear her designs. But she recently won Best of Show in Milwaukee's repurposed runway competition. Can any of you imagine what this dress is made out of? No lightning rod. It's made out of water bottles. And I was so proud of her as she won Best of Show. And I love seeing my daughters grow in creativity. Fortunately, Laura is within driving distance and comes home as often as her schedule allows, and she's the one that I was 8 months pregnant with when I began. Key number 2, innovation is our distinctive. When a national competitor moved into our neighborhood, I was pretty disturbed. The year was 1986, but my accountant wisely admonished me to use competition as a positive, not a negative. Competition is a positive, really? He said, you learn to create a child care center that's so unique and different from every other one in this neighborhood that the parents and children will want to choose yours. I had no idea how to do that. You know, KinderCare has the little bell on top. Was I supposed to put something else on top? Was I to put other kind of windows in my facility? I didn't know. But the answer came as I had the rare opportunity to do some consulting with the Pentagon. I was driving down the Denver Expressway on my way to Fort Carson Army Base. And my then 13-year-old daughter looked out the window and she said, hey Mom, see that sign? It says Children's Museum. Maybe you could stop and get some ideas for your new center. And I love it when the family gets involved in helping to solve the problems. And I sure was glad I took her advice, because when I entered and saw the look of excitement on the children's faces, I knew I had found a winning advantage. So I then traveled all over the country, gathering ideas that I thought we could modify and put into our child care center. I came back and hired a fabricator from the Toledo Zoo to create these interactive museum pieces. And when we opened our new child care center in 1989, it had a 15-foot fiberglass dinosaur. Behind it was a fossil dig, a rocket ship, submarine, storefronts representative of our area businesses, and more. 500 attended our open house, and within 2 months, we were completely full. And this began to define our brand. Today, our centers still have interactive museum exhibits, which are upgraded and changed from time to time. We also integrate the 7 design principles that are identified in our book, and you have them here on your screen. And through our innovative approach, we are setting the standard that many others want to follow, including the military centers that I previously mentioned. Even just last Saturday, we had 30 educators from another state pay us a fee to come in and see our child care centers and to gather ideas in terms of ways they could make their child care centers inspiring. In the Charleston market, we are the first center to bring the Reggio Emilia project-based educational model to that community. And along with our innovative designs, we definitely stand out from our competition, which is a major factor in our fast growth since our opening 3 months ago. And I'm going to pause for a moment and let you see some of the photos from our newest center. It goes along with what Steve said when he introduced the evening. Faith is our foundation, and that's what tonight is all about. While I thought my upbringing was legalistic and too restrictive, my faith has been the foundation upon which I have made decisions and have built my business. In 1982, as I was preparing to open, I saw the movie Chariots of Fire. Chariots of Fire is about 2 Olympic hopefuls. Harold Abrams was a minority, and he wanted to prove something to the people around him, the people he felt had discriminated against him. The other hopeful was Eric Little, and Eric said, "God has made me fast and made me fast for a purpose. With my abilities, I am going to honor God." There's a lot more to this story, but both men ultimately won the gold medal. As I watched that movie, tears streamed down my face, and I promised God in that theater that I would honor him with the abilities that he had given me. And that if I should be successful, I know it was because of him. At the same time, I determined to integrate Christian education into our programming. Knowing we serve parents of many faiths, I also determined not to prejudice the children against the faith of their parents. But anyone who enrolls with Children's Discovery Center knows that the child will receive a Bible lesson once a week. We will have prayer before our meals, and we will celebrate the true religious significance of Christmas and of Easter. In 1991, I hoped to build a new child care center in Columbus, and I needed an SBA loan to make that a reality. The SBA approved the loan, providing I promised never to mention God to the children. It was a promise I could not keep. I remembered my commitment back there in that theater. And I said, well, then I won't do it. The Rutherford Institute heard of my plight, and they filed a lawsuit on my behalf against the federal government. We lost the first round in federal court. 3 years later, we won in the 6th District Circuit Court of Appeal. And we set a national precedent that a private business could not be denied a loan based on their faith. By the time the lawsuit was settled, the land had been sold to someone else, and I never did get to build that child care center in Columbus. But I never regretted that decision. Being true to my convictions was much more important than having one more center or a little more money in the bank. By the way, in the midst of the lawsuit against the SBA, they chose to honor me as Small Business Person of the Year for all of Northern Ohio. The Lord sure works in mysterious ways. Proverbs 3 states, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path." Since then, CDC has quadrupled in size. I have been honored as Entrepreneur of the Year, Manager of the Year, and you heard earlier I've won the Governor's Award for Excellence in Enterprise. And as I receive these awards, I always remember to thank God for his faithfulness and his blessings upon our company. Faith is also demonstrated in how we serve others and make a difference. In December of 1996, it was over the Christmas break, I was invited to Eastern Nazarene College. And there I met Mr. Ed Mann, Merritt Mann, Dorothy Tarrant, Angie Deal, who was a student at ENC. I learned about ENC's study abroad program in Sighisoara, Romania. And I had the privilege of joining Merritt Mann and Dr. David Kale, who at the time was your academic dean, I believe, as we toured the orphanages and we observed ENC students working with the caregivers to model best practices and lovingly care for the children. When I met Dorothy Tarrant again while I was there, I was impressed by her vision to make a difference in that community. And before I went, I never dreamed how much this ministry would capture my heart. Today, our company ties 10% of our profits to Veritas and provides ongoing organizational support. Our corporate office has become the U.S. headquarters for Veritas. I made my 16th trip there this year, and I have led many teams of professionals to partner with Veritas. While ENC no longer provides oversight for this program, 8 students from various Christian colleges are there this semester. 2 years ago, as I was preparing to leave, Stolutza, the director of the Kids Club, said, "Hey Lois, would you like to visit one of the homes where some of our children live?" And I said, "Sure." This is not the actual home, but it was one very similar to this. After climbing a very steep hill, Merritt remembers when I went with him, we had steep hills to climb. And when I climbed that hill and walked into that home, I was so taken. Here was a mother sick in bed. She had 7 children. They ranged in age from 5 to 16. There was only one double bed, and there was a pull-out sofa. I saw the look of dejection in those children's eyes. And I was concerned that inappropriate sexual activity may be occurring because the teenage boys and girls were sleeping in the same bed. That year at Christmas, I prayed, and I said, "God, what do you want me to give you for your Christmas gift?" And as plain as anything, I heard God speak to my heart and say, "I want you to add another room onto that house so these children will have their own space." So I got back in touch with the ministry there in Sighisoara, and they said for $1,500, we could add another room. When I returned last fall, I was moved by the difference this addition had made for this family. There was a definite change in the girls' demeanor. I began to see hope in their eyes. And when the project was finished, the Christian contractor said to the mother, he said, "Look, we've given you all this, but you don't seem happy." And she began to pour out the things that were troubling her in her life. And he said, "You don't know Jesus, do you?" And she said she didn't. And he had a chance to lead her into a saving relationship with Jesus Christ because we had reached out with her and had made this contact with this family. When I visited, a Bible lay beside the bed, and Dad had moved back in with the family. When I climbed the steps to the second story, there were no beds, but there were quilts in a pile in the corner, and I looked around and realized there was space for every child to lay out his or her quilt and could have that own private little space for sleeping. Even though we didn't speak the same language, the radiance on their faces told me that I had made a difference. The scripture, "Give a cup of cold water in Jesus' name," refers to meeting social needs by demonstrating Christian compassion. I realized that I can't help all the families that I encounter there, but God has used me so many times to tell the story of the work that is being done there in Sigashwara. And I've been able to have other people share in my passion for ministry. I had not planned to tell you this story, but I will. Last fall, after leading a team of 23 people to Veritas from 5 different states, another couple and I decided to travel through Europe. And we stopped in a place called St. Moritz, Switzerland. And we've been there for 4 days, and we were ready to go on. Then we were going on to Italy. And on the platform, a man heard me speaking English. And he said, "And where are you from?" And I told him, and he said, "And what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I was just part of a mission project in a place called Sigashwara, Romania." And he said, "Oh, well, I've done mission work, and I've done mission work in Mexico." But he said, "Mexico has become too violent, so now I do some work in southern Texas." He said, "I'm a farmer from Idaho." And I said, "Oh, isn't it interesting how God chooses to use us in different places?" And with that, the train came. He got in car number 1, I got in car number 2. I'm riding for about half an hour, and I look up, and here comes this man down the aisle with paper and pencil, and he says, "I want to be on your next trip to Romania." And you know what? When the team went last September, 2 months ago, he and his wife and someone else from Idaho went to Sigashwara, Romania, and were part of that team. And I share that with you when I say, I can't do it all, but you know, if God allows me the opportunity to tell the story, He will bring other people in who can share their skills and their resources to help reach the needs in wherever God draws you. Missio Link International is another program which I have been involved since the year 2000 in Timișoara, Romania. I was instrumental in helping to start the Deborah Centers, which serve 24 abused and abandoned street girls. Their stories are horrific. Yet through these centers, many have found emotional and physical healing and are now becoming young women with promise of a bright future. One just graduated with her degree in accounting and got married and is working for an international business. Another girl was just accepted into med school. When I visit the girls, it is easy to see the transformation that comes from experiencing God's love through attentive and professional care. The joy of giving and making a difference as an expression of my faith makes me wish I could do more. In summary, as I look back on my life, I cannot imagine how far I have come from such a tenuous beginning. But do you remember the 3 keys? What's the first one?
Excellence.
Excellence. What's the second one?
Innovation.
Innovation. And the third one?
Faith.
Faith. With these 3, I have been able to achieve more success than I ever dreamed possible. And it's my hope and prayer that these 3 keys that I've shared from my personal experience will inspire you to be your best and to impact your workplace, your community, and perhaps ultimately the world for the better.